And welcome to Clutch or Kick, episode 8. I'm sorry for the abrupt warning, but I want you all to be awake on this Thursday morning if you're watching the live stream. But actually, it's currently the afternoon time for us here in sunny Los Angeles.
It's 4:20.
It's 4:25 currently.
Shut up, it's 4:20.
Is the time that we're recording this, which means we're also recording this in the middle of the Pop Flash tournament. So there's a couple of things that we're going to be taking some liberties with, but it's a bit of a speed run podcast, but with all the depth that we usually go into. So we're going to start things off pretty quickly. Patch 1.06 Nebula skins. Boom. There was a patch that was released. What the hell did this change again? I can't even remember.
It was just the jumping jet.
Yeah, essentially.
Oh, it was a shotgun change.
Yeah.
The shotgun patch. This was necessary. The amount of games I was in where I had died to a jet flying through the stratosphere with a judge and sniping people with it. Yeah, the amount of value people were getting with shotguns was kind of absurd.
Yeah. I mean, every time you see like a jet like, oh, I'm gonna, updraft and just dash in with a shorty or something, and you're like, oh, well, that's cool. That's my life. You know?
Yeah, the shorty
really takes
is also
away
ridiculous,
from
right? Like, the fact that you can just entry and jet, dash updraft and still find kills like against rifles if you just time it correctly is kind of absurd.
I don't know about you, Wyatt. I actively now as well, if we win the initial pistol round, I never want to go through an area where they might be holding a close 90-degree angle because of the shorty. It's just still in the game. Do you guys think shotguns are still a little bit broken? A little bit, maybe the shorty is a little bit too much value for $200?
I mean, I'm not seeing as much Bucky as we did in like beta and stuff. Like there was so much Bucky in the beta, and then obviously I think they nerfed that one patch. And we stopped seeing it. I mean, there's obviously the judge going around with like the jet stashing in. Tens utilizes the judge quite well. I think the shotguns adds a nice aspect to the game because you have to be aware of them and you have to play around them, which means you have to use utility and play smart around it. Am I the only one of that like kind of likes that aspect of the game?
I mean, the problem is it turns every corner into a potential death trap when the other team is running a shotgun. So whereas normally you would be able to trade, the shorty just fires so fast that you can end up losing both players to the shorty. The same with the judge as well. I mean, the Bucky is less so, right? Because it has that like boom, boom kind of play instead of the shorty or the judge. I don't know. I don't think I'm a great fan of it personally, but it does add a bit of a difference compared to CS where you could do more with more of the guns in the game.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the shorty or the price for it at the moment. I do think it's a bit too much value at this point for just 200 credits. Yeah, you can get away with buying a shorty so often on even hard eco rounds where it really doesn't matter, and you can get so many free kills. I think they could potentially raise the shorty cost by maybe 100. But overall, all those changes are good, and nerfing the jet slightly with the shotguns, good change, reasonable, needed to happen. And even still today, in the few matches we've seen so far from Pop Flash, you're still seeing jets with shorties. It's still happening, but it's
still really good.
And I think that obviously yet to be seen, but I think at least so far, I don't mind it being in the game, but I do mind it being as prevalent as it was. So good change to me.
Okay. Do you guys think that the one way to balance it, I just thought of immediately. I mean, call me out if this is dumb. But instead of the 2 shots that you could take, it fires both the shells at once. And
so it has one shot.
Yeah, it only has one shot because it's like the entire thing of the shorty is it's like a suicide angle gun. It's meant to be able to get you a kill in a suicide angle position, and the ability for you to be able to take 2 shots that can do 150 damage at that kind of angle. What if they made it so that the shots themselves, like it fired more bullets?
300?
Yeah. If it fired more bullets, but the fall off was a bit more extreme, so that it was quite literally a suicide angle gun where you fire that shot off and you know you're fucked. You have to.
So it'd be like a
taser
shot from CS:GO.
Yeah, just a taser.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't think that's particularly good either. I think the shorty's pretty punishable. It's just if it had a slight more time with the one shot from the next shot, it would allow the rifles to trade a little bit better, I think. But still, you don't lose 2 people to the shorty very often. The judge does fire super fast though.
Yeah,
but I suppose that's expensive, you know. So
true.
I would be fine reducing the rate of fire of the shorty, if some.
Yeah,
you know,
that would help, I think, as well. As aside from my batshit insane suggestion of combining the shot into one 300 damage super shot.
I like it conceptually. Aside from that,
yeah.
Aside from the damage, I do see the idea of just it being 1 shot rather than 2. But
what I thought you meant, Bren, was that if you click the button to fire, it goes boom, boom, like straight after each other. That's what I thought you meant. So that there's no way that you can control one shot to the other. So after you shoot your first shot, they know the second one is coming, and then you're gonna have to reload.
Yeah,
I feel like that would be very punishable at that point.
That's actually a much better change than I suggested. But yeah, let's talk about the skins that got released as well, because we all know that we all love skins here. God bless them.
I want to, before we even talk about the Nebula skins, this has been put in because I know Wyatt loves to mold about skins. But Wyatt, when we were playing last night, said he's coming round to the dragon skins. You're like an episode molding about them.
Yeah, exclusively the Vandal. And particularly, I just like the sound it makes. It has a very nice bass boosted sort of sound when you're firing off. It makes you feel sort of powerful and in control. A little confidence booster. I'm coming around a little bit. Now, will I be buying one? No. But do I like to pick them up if someone else did? Yes, I do.
No, it wriggles
That's
too
where I'm
much,
at.
man. I mean, but what do you think about the Nebula skins?
Just a visual nightmare.
A visual nightmare?
I mean, it's just too much.
It is very, very over the top. This would be right up my alley, but I've already bought the Oni skins, and the Oni selection actually covers so many of these guns. So why would I want to buy the Nebula? And also, they're pretty expensive, and they don't really have any finishers. They don't have any upgradable parts. It's not like the Oni skins where you can make them even cooler. This is purely just like, I mean, it's a cool concept for a gun, right? This is like them showcasing what they can do over CS, but yeah, it's very flashy.
I might have jumped out the window with visual nightmare, but it's definitely not. It's just too much. That's the real take is it's too much. Sorry, Jack.
I mean, I would respect the gun, but like, I guess it's a cool concept, like Bren said. But like when you move the gun and like the skin changes with the environment, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's not a static skin, if that makes sense. Like when you change your crosshair, it actually like moves with the crosshair. Yeah, which is just so absurd. But like then it started coming around to me, and I was like, "There's a lot of pretty colors here. Like there's a lot of cool things here, you know." So I'm actually started coming around to the skin, and now I'm nervous about missing out if I decide not to buy the collection. You all know I am the guy on this podcast that is a hoarder. Like I sacrifice the contents of my wallet for all the skins.
I wouldn't get usage out of it if I bought it, because I've got the Oni skins, and I feel like I've already invested so much money into those that I don't want to replace the Oni skin. The only thing I would replace it, I mean, I don't know. And then the knife as well. I like the Prism knife, but do I really want to go for the Nebula knife? Because I tell you what, I've already been burnt by this in Fortnite. In Fortnite, I was a fiend for skins. I loved purchasing the latest and greatest skins, and what I noticed was that it was just impossible to keep up. They always release a skin that I'm like, oh, I want it, and then I want to replace it and wear it all the time. But then what happens to the old skins? They're just waiting there, chilling, you know? They're left up to the side like old toys. I don't want to be like that anymore, you know? Despite the fact that I spent $300 in the beta to get the extra points. I don't want to be like that.
For life, not just for Christmas.
Exactly.
Well, that's the thing.
Exactly.
So I got actually some PTSD from CSGO, because early on when they first released stickers, those initial stickers are worth like a fortune now. Yeah. And obviously you cannot sell skins in Valorant, like they're tied to your account or whatever. But I have like it's not even $500. I think it's like 5,000. It's like a ridiculous amount, like one of the most expensive skins on the market. I have it on one of my M4s, and I can't take it off. And so I'm like, I've just got this very epic thing because I bought it early on in the lifetime of CSGO. So I'm now the same. Like, what happens if you can't buy dragon skins again? Then I will be the holder of dragon skins like 5 years, when all like
they're gonna
the
sell
kids born in like 2010, they'll be like, holy shit, Reinforce, he's the guy, 2020 he bought the dragon skins.
The thing that you've missed out on is the battle pass skins, because they're never gonna re-release them. Oh yeah, look at these, the iBuy Power Katowice skin.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
How much is that worth?
Outrageous.
No, I got a Titan 2016.
Oh yeah, the Titan ones are worth a shit ton
I'm
as
gonna
well,
go
right?
Dummy in.
Oh, is he stuck outside? Oh, Dummy's just stuck outside our door.
Nice. But Dummy also releases videos of Valorant that are specifically 4 minutes and 20 seconds long, and he just releases them on his YouTube channel.
What, like highlights or something?
Yeah, of when he was playing Valorant, but they're all 4 minutes and 20 seconds long.
What? Who?
Dummy.
Oh shit. Okay, let's move into the pro scene a little bit here, because there were some big changes in the last 2 weeks that we haven't really talked about. The 100 Thieves change is the big one, because they've dropped the PUBG side of things. Wyatt, you have some firm opinions on this. You came out with a video. You came out with the heat, straight for the neck, right? Straight for the jugular. Let's be watching out Nade Shot.
Pretty reasonable.
Nade Shot was out golfing. Nade Shot was out golfing. He read the message. He was like, Wyatt Rivers is on to you. And he was fucking sweating on the field. I'm telling you. But they picked up Nitro. So this is a pretty good pickup, all things considered. But here's the thing with the latest CSGO scene is the last time I followed the CS scene very heavily was 2015, 2016, when NA wasn't really a thing. I mean, it existed, of course. The continent of North America has existed for quite some time. But as for their relevancy in CS, wasn't quite a thing. So for me personally as well, I don't really know the impact of this pickup. I've seen people fucking cream their pants over it, but I don't know. Is it? You guys tell me. Is this the pickup that 100 Thieves need to really get the foundation going?
Well, that's just the Nitro cachet causing the cream. I mean, it's not current Valorant. I mean, we don't know what he's doing in Valorant. I mean, you can watch his stream, and I'm sure he's just rolling ranked players, but at the end of the day, we don't really know until. But there have been a lot of good IGL players that have come over from CS and gotten great early starts on in Valorant as well. People like Angel, for example, and Sabrosa has made the swap over to being an IGL now. I think he used to call for one of his teams, didn't he, in the past? I don't know. Maybe I'm just inventing that.
Sabrosa, I don't know.
All right, we can mix it up and roll it.
yeah. Sabrosa was definitely the IGL.
But there's Existence and Happy both were on a team, SFCS, who were like pedaling around the like 5th place spot in Europe before that team just, I don't know, has not played in tournaments recently. So, but I don't know. Some of it seems to translate pretty well. There's old coaches that have come into Valorant and actually been pretty good, like Effie's and Shinobi as well. So, or at least have been competent. So I think that you would expect Nitro to be a huge pickup, to be honest. Yeah. The guy was the leader of what, like one of the most successful.
Wasn't he on the bench
NA
though?
team?
No.
When he was in CS? No, he was active.
No, he was always starting, and he was super versatile. I mean, he did everything on Team Liquid at one point or another. He was hybrid rifle op, main rifle. He's played every role you could think of. He's been their in-game leader. He hasn't been there. I mean, he's done everything you could possibly do in CS on that team at one point or another. He was there for like 4 years, 5 years, something like that.
Yeah, I watched a bunch of interviews recently to try and catch up on Nitro's history to get to absorb the knowledge from the CS scene a little as well. And apparently he'd fallen off a bit within like the last 6 months. I know that Liquid, they signed Moses, the former caster, to be their coach, and they signed Grim to replace him as well. And apparently, Nitro was not playing at the same level that he had been in the past. You can see it via his ratings as well if you look on HLTV. But I think what we've also seen in Valorant is a lot of these players just having revitalized careers. If you're really committed to making a new chapter of your career once you're into Valorant rather than CS, and that's what Nitro's personally said as well, that he's excited to do that kind of thing. I think this could be huge. It all depends on the other players that they pick up, though.
Yeah, of course, that's the thing. But I mean, inherently, Valorant is a game that requires more thinking. And I think this is a great pickup in that regard, because you pick up a player that knows how to approach this game. And we'll talk about Skadoodle later, but when I first started playing the Valorant beta, I watched Skadoodle stream a lot because he put out his thought process, and it was so advanced compared to the current players at the time. So when you get some of these players that are so smart when it comes to tactical FPS games, I mean, these are huge pickups that will pay off in a year or so. Not even now, because we can talk about Sinatra and how he's doesn't have the tactical FPS background as much, and rotations and all that, the importance of that. But like pickups like these are just like invaluable. But it depends on the rest of the roster, of course, as we've seen with the 100 Thieves. I also appreciated how like this all came about when Nadeshot was streaming and was like pretty pissed off about the results, and it was like, yeah, we'll do something about it. It almost seemed like people pissed him off in his chat, and he was like, well, time to cut the roster. Pissed off in the chat.
It's also just gross mismanagement of the team to even. But I mean, it's a good way to, I suppose, get a clean slate. I mean, the fans are happy. I'm not personally happy with the way that a lot of those players on 100 Thieves were treated, and now most likely their careers are probably going to be pretty ruined, I would say. Like, it's pretty... This has happened previously in esports where a team gets done dirty by the management, like not supporting them with the right resources, or putting the things in place to actually support their success. And as time goes on, they just drop the squad, blame the squad, even though partly as well, it's kind of like the effort needs to be put in, yes, by the players, but also the org needs to set the right system up so that they can succeed. And that was never in place for this team, apparently. It was just kind of like a flash in the pan ordeal where they were hoping they were going to perform well. But this is a good opportunity anyway for 100 Thieves moving forward. I think moving this on with mixing it up maybe with some non-CS people. You've already got Hiko and Nitro. These guys are veteran minds.
Get some freaky Valorant or
why not?
I'm
just players.
Begging them to just take their time.
Yeah.
Some org, please. Please.
Take your time.
Please, NA orgs. Just wait a couple months.
Yeah.
There's already so much new talent coming up. Just wait, please.
Yeah, this is the last Ignition tournament for a while, right? So, I mean...
we don't know when the next tournament will be after, but... Yeah, no, there should be some third-party tournaments as well, but in terms of the Riot-sanctioned ones,
But there should be time, is what I'm saying.
Yes,
yeah, there should be a little bit. And I actually, Fion, Tyler Erzberger, who writes for ESPN, put out an article about the 100 Thieves situation as well, kind of outlining how it had even got to that point. Because when you look at, 100 Thieves should have dropped at least a majority of these players, but they should have never signed them in the first place. Like, that's the major issue. They shouldn't have ever put them in that position to receive all of that fan criticism and then have to rip it away. It's just that it was ridiculous that they even got to that situation.
Yeah.
But he outlined in his article that part of the reason why was just because 100 Thieves desperately wanted to field a roster for these early Ignition events. Like, so many teams were just scrambling to put a roster together, any roster that they could find, in order to participate in the early tournaments. So hopefully, now that they've missed out on the opportunity to be a big name within the scene, they've got, attention via drama, and any what do they say? Any attention, any publicity is good publicity. Yeah. Even if it's people hating on them. Yep. But now that they have the time to rebuild, I think they should be in a position where they can potentially put together a good team.
And just last thing, they need to, but also they need to put together a top tier team now. If they screw this up and this team that they're creating doesn't perform, that's going to be not a good look for them.
Bad track record when it comes to managing esports teams so far. 100 Thieves. Well, hopefully they turn it around though, because none of us want to see players and orgs fail. At the end of the day, we want to see some good Valorant being played from teams that are actually competent. The next item on the itinerary is the Cloud9 team signing a Korean roster, and they also signed Vice as well to the main roster. This pickup, the signing of a Korean team, I don't know. Early on, I would have said that this is a good idea, but now, with the issues with the Vanguard system, basically, over in the PC Bang system in Korea, the thing that you kind of need to get your game going, as far as I'm aware, it's doing okay. Like, the game is doing well. It's like in the top 10 for PC Bangs.
Yeah, it's like ninth. It's got like 1.5% of playtime.
Yeah. It's not dominating.
But it's also nowhere near what Overwatch was like when Overwatch first came out, right? So like Overwatch had that big early peak where you could see that the Korean scene really vibed with it. It overtook League of Legends for a short time and then it dipped back below, which is all fine, all well and good. It's been nowhere near. It hasn't even been similar from what I understand looking at the stats. So and the Korean scene doesn't have a ton of teams and a ton of players. Like a lot of these, there's 2 Overwatch League players on this team, one of which hasn't even played in a tournament from what I can tell, Munchkin. And Bazzi's played with a former roster. A lot of the top teams are just like former players from CS or OWL rather than being.
I think it's a weird
that you would.
Yeah, I mean, it's
like unknowns.
It's a interesting approach, I think, just to esports in general, right? That these teams are picking up 2 rosters across the regions to see which one's going to have the best success. But yeah, I mean, hopefully it works out for them. But I also really want to see the Korean scene flourish. I'm not sure if they've actually solved a lot of these Vanguard issues, because I know they've made an update to it, because the other day I right-clicked it and they made it very easy to uninstall it and basically exit out of it. So I don't know if that update has made its way through the systems in Korea, because I can't stress enough how important it is for a game's success. It's almost directly tied to whether or not people are playing it in these PC bongs.
Yeah.
I mean, the way Valorant is shaping up as well is that it's a hyper-competitive game. So I think without a shadow of a doubt that eventually Valorant, the crew behind it, will dedicate resources to the Korean scene, because I think it'd be a massive mistake not to. I mean, we've seen what Korea can come up with limited resources in the past. I mean, even looking back at games like Dota 2, was it MVP Space or something, Bren? They're just like, they had like barely no practice over in
MVP
Korea.
Phoenix. Yeah, they had to scrim against like Southeast Asian teams on ridiculous ping, and they played a super unconventional style of Dota.
Yeah, but still managed to make it to TI like deep in the tournament, I think.
Yeah,
even
that was actually one of the best storylines of all time in esports, and I stand by that. Yeah.
And then 1.6, you had organizations like We Made Fox, who made an impact in the 1.6 scene with limited resources still. So even spite of Valorant's current playtime in South Korea, they could bring so much quality to the competitive scene with limited amount of players still, because of their work ethic and because how they approach esports in general. So I'm so excited to see that scene develop over time, more tournaments, and see if Valorant will actually like commit to the region and sort out the Vanguard issues. Because I mean, I quite honestly, I'm not playing anymore, so I can say now that I'm excited to see if the Koreans can just take over in EU in Valorant, because that would bring so much quality gameplay to the game overall, and it would up the standards of EU and NA. So I want them to do the same thing over in Valorant.
Yeah, I also think that EU and NA would have so much historical ego that they would take very unkindly to getting demolished by Korean teams, and it would push them even further. Because in a game like Overwatch, it was almost from the beginning seemed inevitable, because Overwatch was big in Korea. The biggest names and voices in Overwatch were saying that Korea was going to dominate. And even though the European and North American teams were pretty good, once you started to see Apex, like they had a better system, a better structure, better infrastructure, it almost seemed inevitable. But when you go to CS type of games, there's just so much history involved in Europe and North America, especially Europe, that I feel like all of those players would try exceptionally hard to preserve that history of being the best at those kind of games. It's almost like the last thing that Europe and North America have to hang on to. It's like the only things that they're good at is like this CS type games. Yeah. And to lose that would be an enormous blow for like the continent's history in esports. So I really think that could be an amazing like long-term narrative that we have in Valorant. And it would be an awful shame if it went down the pan in that kind of way. Like if this opportunity is squandered, it is an enormous miss for the Valorant team.
One final thing just before we move off this topic was Vice was finally signed. I don't want to dwell on this too much, because I think all of us have pretty much stated our opinions on the C9 squad. They're also playing currently in a tournament.
I mean, he was fragging out earlier today. He was having his best performance I've ever seen from him.
Yeah, that was the best BO3 I've seen from Vice yet. Was the day one pop flash BO3.
As soon as Vice got signed, I saw people replying in the tweets. A couple of fans replied to it. A couple of like the first fans who replied said, "Yes, now that everyone is solidified on a contract, let's see what this team is finally capable of." And I I'm like, bro, these guys have been playing together forever. They've just taken forever to actually finalize the rosters. They haven't made any roster changes. There's no difference in terms of the support structure that Vice is going to get. I mean, he'll get paid, but I assume that he wasn't having to work 9 till 5 the rest of the time anyway. I assume that this team was still all in. And so I was like mocking these people who were expecting a big uptick in performance now that they're all signed. And then they come out in their first game, and it works, and Vice drops like 40 kills in their first match. Which
I think
I think is a coincidence. I don't hope it's a coincidence. It would be awesome to see Cloud9 succeed, but I think it's a coincidence.
This match that we saw, I don't want to talk about it too much, but Wyatt disagrees with me with this, but I have been seeing improvements from Cloud9 over time. Like, you can tell that they are. Or Josh looks disgusted by this comment.
What, do you mean like a linear improvement over time? Because they looked horseshit in the FaZe Invitational, and that was the most recent tournament. So if you're saying it was like a linear improvement, that must have been a bit of a dip.
Taking the average, like if we were to take the averages over, like, let's say 10 years, you would see an increase from point A to point B. You know, if we really expand the scale that we're looking at it, you could see an improvement. Like, yes, they did look really bad, but here's the other thing as well, actually. I think this is a very puggy team initially, right? They were very much played around 10s. They didn't have that much coordination. In terms of executes, their playbook was like a crayon coloring. It was not very flourished. They didn't have much to work off. But to get better, sometimes you've got to take a couple of steps back. And I think they're going to look worse before they end up looking better because they're trying to get a lot of the foundations ready. They're trying to get some of these trades in, trying to basically instill discipline into their team. I think arguably you're going to look worse when you're thinking about that a lot more. The teams do this all the time across esports when they're trying to enact a certain strategy they have in their mind. They often look worse before they get it down to just being second nature. This might be a hot take, but I think that Cloud9... that was what we saw in the FaZe Invitational. It was just all over the fucking place, but they had an idea of how they wanted to play stuff. But they are, I think, improving over the course of when they first started, obviously, to now. They are seeing improvements.
I don't think that makes sense personally because they've also just swapped their roles around all the time while they've been playing. And you can't set that kind of foundation without having the roles in place. Like, you look at the FaZe Invitational and you look at the series that they played today, which will be yesterday for anybody who's watching this live. And Cloud9 might have already played another match by the time this comes out, so I'm not sure. But they were playing totally different comps. Like, they're playing Killjoy, no Sage, Mitch playing the Rays. This is stuff they've never done before. They haven't played these kind of comps. They haven't played this style before. So I don't think that this is gradual improvements. I think this is them kind of throwing shit at a wall, but with better and better aim at their wall. So they're like, they're throwing ideas, but they're getting closer to what's going to work for their team. And when you're flinging shit at a wall, sometimes you're going to get covered in shit. And I think they've had a couple of tournaments where I don't know. I kind of lost myself in the poop analogy at some point here. There's some kind of fecal point that I'm trying to get to. But
I understand and I agree. Don't want to get too off into the pop flash thing already, but I appreciate their willingness to be very experimental, especially so far in the first match of this tournament. It's
I'm telling you, boys,
completely different.
Sometimes
team,
got to take a couple of steps back before you can take a leap forward. I'm telling you. I think Cloud9.
Yeah, they had to wait. They had to keep a couple of steps back and wait for Killjoy to be enabled. Mm-hmm. And then they can run Sageless comms properly with 2 seconds.
Anyway, Dignitas have signed a squad. They've signed the Homeless Boys. And they're also playing with Shanks as a stand-in over Laski, because Laski obviously gone from the squad. Shanks is like this, as far as I'm aware, was like an MDL player, right? This up-and-comer of quite...
Someone told me he was Poised's younger brother.
Really?
Which I'm gonna
broadcast.
I'm gonna double check now on Liquipedia just to make sure.
Yeah, please double check his credentials, because what I read was, admittedly not well researched, but it was that he played on a team with Marved as well at a certain point.
I mean, they both have the same surname. So considering, they both have the same. They both have the same surname. They're both Canadian Vietnamese. So, and it says trivia. He is the younger brother of Poised. So yeah,
well, there you go. Yeah.
That's irrefutable.
Yeah.
This pickup in general, right? Homeless have been looking like this team, but I mean, I've been a pretty big advocate against just orgs jumping in on whatever team they can pick up. like in terms of whole orgs. But what do we make of this without obviously diving in on a lot? I suppose we can talk about the match that they played today.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. I think that this team already, because the thing is, the reason we don't like orgs jumping onto teams is because the teams themselves normally are created by just getting a bunch of friends together. These guys weren't. This is a core of like Sam and Def is what I would say the kind of core is that floated between a bunch of different teams playing together, trying to find other groups of amateur players to play alongside. And then they slowly added pieces. And it's like this process of natural selection where they're trying out certain people and then getting rid of them. And they've slowly gotten better and better as a team. I mean, they're clearly willing to make the moves and they're not just playing with friends because they dropped Laski right before getting the paycheck. Yeah. So that they're committed to improvement completely. And it has paid off wonderfully. This is, I said on Valoranting when I was talking about this team a couple of days ago before I knew who they were playing with, that if they had been playing with a player like TenZ, they would be competing for that top 1, top 2 spot. And then I hadn't watched this game because I was asleep this morning because I like to sleep in. And I went back and watched Dignitas play against TSM in the tournament. They slapped them and Shanks was doing so well. This team already looks sick.
Yeah, I mean, TSM did look pretty poor in that showing. Why? You can talk about it.
Oh, yeah. Well, TSM I mean, I agree with you, Johnny. TSM didn't look great. And they always struggle out
early
the gate
group stage
in the
or
group
like...
stage. You made that point earlier as well. Yeah. And I think that's very true. But yeah, I like the team a lot. I like the signing from Dignitas. I like the players. They're all from different backgrounds, like you're saying. It's not just like a nepotism CSGO. We played together before. Let's make a team and get the check type situation. They are actually putting thought into forming this team. And I do think the problem they had before was just a lack of firepower from their duelists.
Yeah.
I mean, Laski seemed all right, but I think he needs a bit more time probably on a bit of a lower level team to work his way up.
Sure. And he Shanks, also did Jett and did an AWP right as well.
Right. I mean, Shanks just looks like a cocky as hell fragger. I mean, he was pushing for eco frags, jump peeking with an AWP, like Cutler running away with a deagle, like just going for everything.
He's a player with a lot to prove, I think, as well. He wants to be known as one of the big boys, so that's going to be interesting to see how that shapes out.
Yeah, they said on broadcast, I think, that Dignitas were looking for this type of player, just like Josh wanted. And so obviously this is a great fit. And he actually won quite a couple of duels against Wardell, I think specifically on Haven. Also, like TSM, just like blindly pushed onto sites without any utility into like a double AWP setup from Dignitas. And it was just like a very odd match. So I don't know how much weight to put in this performance at all. It just looked like it was an early start time and TSM just like woke up and were not ready at all. Looked like they hadn't had their caffeine. But that being said, I mean, Shanks had an impressive performance overall, so gotta be happy with that. And also, I recommend people go back and watch because Flashpoint did obviously the organization behind Pop Flash did a content video on Salm's career where they actually went back and talked about his history and Heroes of the Storm and Fortnite. And it was also like an interview with him, included Wolf actually from the Overwatch League broadcast because he knew him from Heroes of the Storm. It was a great content video about Salm, and it like immediately made me a fan of this team because you understood like the history and the background of him as a player. So that was great to watch, and I recommend people to go back and watch that video.
Yeah, those were so cool.
Watching Sam play as well, like the guy's got firepower and he understands his role within the team, and he's able to get the amount of information they're able to get from Sam and Def together is so key. They're able to make that work incredible. What is this? What are we watching here?
This isn't the Pop Flash one, right?
No,
it's
I have no idea.
I think that's just a random talk show.
Yeah, the amount of info they're able to get. So I understand what you mean, Johnny, about not being able to read too much into that one series where Dignitas beat TSM. I mean, they beat them 2-0, but I think TSM were clearly underperforming, but Dignitas also looked great. Like they look fundamentally really good. Like the defaults they're running all make sense. The rotations around the map are good. They get a ton of info. Def's providing a lot of pressure. Their fragging is all good. This is a strong team.
Oh yeah.
What's happening in the house?
We just heard, I don't know, some type of wildlife outside of our door. I don't know what that was.
It was a chupacabra or something? Like, what was that?
That was, So the thing is, right, we just heard a sound. I've never heard that sound before.
I tell you what, I just
brand
saw.
New sound.
I tell you what, I just saw a squirrel run around the corner out of our window here, and I also just saw a dog owner come running out with two dogs. Yeah, 2 dogs running around, and he's running after his dog now.
I don't know what is happening.
I think outside. Coyote or something?
No, I think the dogs may have caught a squirrel. I'm not even kidding. Well, anyway, I want to move us on to I want to move us away from, because Dignitas, I think we've all said our piece on this one. I think we're looking forward to how they perform, obviously, for the tournament. Great first showing so far, at least from what we've seen currently as we're recording.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. The only other thing to add is people were getting mad about Pop Flash and not inviting FaZe and 100 Thieves and some other teams because they only had top 8. Dignitas were definitely in the top 8. Like these are the top 8 teams in
also
NA Valorant right now.
When these invites were being sent out, the FaZe didn't have a full roster.
Yeah.
So apparently,
FaZe aren't good enough anyway. So
yeah, there you go. Take them out. Let's move on to Rogue, because they've rumored now. They are rumored. I don't know where this rumors come from, but they're rumored to sign NeedMoreDM.
This is, I'll tell you where this has come from. This is one of the Halo of Thoughts specials.
Oh,
because he's starting to move into Valorant. And Lord Almighty, I mean, I hope he improves his fact checking and article writing a little bit, because that guy was mad unreliable when it came to Overwatch. But he tries his hardest, bless him.
Yeah, I mean,
does he try his hardest? We'll have to see.
How much do you want to just throw and shade at him?
No, but hey, come on. If you're a journalist and you're supposed to leak stuff, if you're not credible, then like fuck
exactly,
off.
Just
but,
you need to be pretty reliable.
Yeah, I don't have anything against like credible journalists that like actually leak important things or unimportant things for that matter.
Sure, yeah.
But at least be right about it. You can't just make shit up. And so your credibility is on the line here.
Yeah,
so we'll see what
Dr. Disrespect. Well, where is he? What do we even make of this rumor then that they are picking up NeedMoreDM? Is this just another case of orgs trying to jump in?
My problem with it is that their star fragger Buzzed has already left the team because he realized he was just too good for the team, I think. I don't know whether he was kicked, but I think he just left because he was carrying them essentially. So now, I mean, Rogue are rumored to be signing a full Hungarian squad without the best Hungarian player. So
interesting.
That's very odd. And I hope this doesn't happen more in Europe, where the like tier 2 organizations just try and snap everybody up without making top teams, because then everyone's locked into contracts and you can't actually.
And yeah, I mean, also there's a big steep fall off as well outside of the top 4, arguably in EU.
Yeah.
So trying to make that move when, I mean, in NA you can do it, because I mean the NA teams are just this melting pot of puggy styles that can somehow take wins against each other. You never know. It's like gambling. You're just going to sign a team and they might make it to the finals because TSM decided to fucking double peak an AWPer with no smokes. Like, you never know. But yeah, I feel like that could burn orgs. And I don't want to see organizations burnt. They should be hiring us as consultants.
Especially Rogue. True. Rogue, if you underperform as an organization, that hurts my credibility. So I need you to
because
step
they picked you up
sign premier teams only.
Yeah,
premier teams only.
All right, let's go back over to the North American scene as well. I want to talk about T1 and their recent adjustments. Now, we haven't seen T1 play as we're recording this, but they are going to be playing against Immortals by the time this video is live, so that you'll get a pretty good indication of how this team's going to be performing. But Skadoodle has been benched indefinitely from this team, and they are going to be playing with, the name escapes me.
EEIU.
Yeah,
I don't know how you pronounce that
guy's
name.
Like
EEIU.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we should speculate too much on this, but I think we can definitely speculate on Skadoodle's situation a little bit, just because we've all been in esports for a while, and I think we are no strangers to this kind of situation as it happens. I think we've all seen this situation play out where a player moves over from another game, they get a pretty good deal in terms of a contract, they get a pretty good team in terms of being surrounded by people who are their friends, but maybe the game just isn't what you were looking for. And I think you could kind of tell this actually from Skadoodle in general. There was also a leak as well on somebody's personal stream where they were commenting on Skadoodle's comms and shit talking him without realizing there was a stream going on. So
yeah,
there was that as well.
Crashies about it.
Oh shit!
Apparently that's been an issue in the past as well before, like with Scar Common while he's AWPing. So I'm not even sure that would be something he was unaware of. But yeah, I can't imagine that was particularly pleasant for him to stumble across.
Yeah, I would actually be in those situations sometimes as a player where I would be like, yeah, I come all the time. What are you talking about? And I watch back VODs and I'd actually not come at all. And my teammates would just be like, come on, dude, have some self-awareness. But it's quite surprising, I find anyway, because as I said, I followed Scott early on in the game and I actually thought that he was really smart about it. I think, and as a lot of other people have said, that he got screwed over by Jett being the AWPing agent, whereas it requires a very selfish mindset and you play very self-oriented, whereas Ska was primarily playing smokers in the past, etc. So I think the argument about the hero pools definitely applies here, but does he have a spot in T1 moving forward? I don't know, but I still think he's really smart about the game.
Hero pool, agent pool.
I mean, he's currently agent pool. He's currently doing a co-stream for the Hot Flash tournament that's going on.
He's doing a co-stream.
So he's sticking around in Valorant. So I don't really think that he's, disliking the game or anything like that.
You don't think it's a lack of passion?
I think that he was the wrong fit for T1. I don't know. I could definitely see him still go to another team. I think that's still definitely a possibility. He's even said that he's going to be trying out, or what did he say? He's going to be practicing with other teams or something like that. Right. I mean, he's presumably locked into a T1 contract. And because he's such a big streamer, they're not just going to let him go to another team without him staying on T1. Like, this is the thing that a lot of people don't quite understand, I think, about like how contracts work. They're not gonna release him from T1 just because they don't want him on the roster, because he's still super valuable in terms of the eyes that he brings, because he has a massive stream following. So they're going to keep him on T1 as long as they can until they find another organization to buy him out of a contract, or until his contract finishes, or they can find some good trade or some meaningful way of sending him off somewhere else.
Let me ask you this. Do you think maybe it would be in Ska's interest to perhaps move away from AWPing in this game? Because we know that obviously in Counter-Strike he was an absolute beast, incredible in that regard, but maybe moving forward for his career, if he wants to be an IGL and he actually could play some of these smokers instead, move away from the AWPing and focus on mainly rifling and shot calling.
I remember him saying very early on, this was quite a while ago, probably during the beta, I remember him saying on stream that he didn't really like AWPing in Valorant. He preferred just rifling now. So that I was just gonna say that could also play into him not having a real good role in T1, just not fitting in the roster of 5 they have.
I mean, the whole of T1 is very passive as well, so the fact that he was pretty passive himself didn't help. But has he ever been noted for his rifling within CS? I thought he was pretty much known as just like a great AWPer, like maybe the best AWPer in North America's ever produced. But apart from that, I mean, that was him. He was the AWP in that sense.
Yeah.
He was always a good rifler, though. He was known as a good rifler, obviously main AWP, but he was not the kind of AWPer in CS that as soon as you take it away, he's just he's just bot Jeff running around the map. He's actually still playing the game. He was a good rifler, so.
All right, let's move on to, again, we're going to go back over the ocean, back over to EU land, and talk about
I don't know whether we added this to the rundown, but there was did you see that Taimu and Shadowburn and stuff made a team?
Yeah, I was going to talk about that maybe at some point. But I want to. Okay, yeah. Let's. I mean, you want to talk about that? Let's talk about that, Josh. You're taking a hosting role over.
Well, just before we get into the competitive stuff, because this is a team that we have no idea what they're going to do. It doesn't really tie into the competitive scene in any sense.
Yeah,
it's not like we can rank them. It's just interesting for the Overwatch League people that are watching. I think. Have you seen Shadowburn's frag movie clips?
In this game, yeah, they are nuts. Yeah. Like, if you wanted to go off of that, I mean, we might as well be saying Asu was the best player in the world, because you can't fucking go off of frag clips, can you?
Yeah.
Like, you just can't do it. But he is a nutty player. My issue with this squad is, there's a VLR.GG article, Kurt, as well. It's the most recent one. My issue with this roster being built is that it's probably going to suffer from the same issues that the FaZe team has, in that none of these players organically come from a tactical shooter. You've got somebody who's come from Rust PvP, someone who's come from PUBG, and you've got 3 players. Forsaken obviously has a bit more of a storied history, but Tymo and Shadowburn, who are coming from Overwatch. This is a team that undisputably has a lot of talent, but I do worry a lot that these players are going to suffer from the same issues that FaZe do.
Yeah, I mean, unless you can get out of like tier 3 or whatever, then, you know, it's pretty much just fun and games, you know? So until they actually get there, get some good results going. Tymo played a lot in the beta, of course, and he was on some like Finnish teams. I think he played with Tweak at one point, who also comes from Overwatch as well. So, you know, I'm rooting for all of these guys, but like until you get the results required to actually be noteworthy, then it's nothing more than like a team of
this is a Shadowburn players
who.
I mean,
I mean,
it's the Jett, bro.
Yeah, he's just he reacts to things so quickly. He's a freak in terms of his ability to, I don't know, just be aware of people on the map and immediately react to stuff that's going on.
Ridiculous in all these clips is that he's right-clicking. The fucking RNG right-click. Like, the fact that he's getting the perfect accuracy from 10 meters away is absurd, but...
Is it that bad?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Like, yes, it's pretty bad. You need to be like...
Burn because he misses.
Genuinely speaking, I have 0.25 my own clips playing Jett so many times, and I get cucked by this fucking game so often when I play Jett. It makes me never want to play Jett ever, because the right click is so inconsistent. And there's going to be people watching this. Some of you are going to be like, oh, blah, 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 but some of you are going to be like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, Bren. You are not the problem here. This clip's so old, the boxes are orange.
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
Oh my god.
Both Tymo and Shadowburn are both op players, from what I understand as well. And I have never seen Shadowburn play anything other than the Jett. I don't know whether this team's going to be any good, but it's going to be flashy, and it's going to give me nostalgia vibes from 20.
All right.
I don't know, 2012.
Let's shift the conversation over to the actual EU tournaments to take place. Now, we're not really given this tournament a lot of I'd say weight. Yeah, that's definitely the right word to use, because the tournament format for the Allied Esports event was so kind of scuffed. I mean, you had best of ones in the playoffs leading all the way up to it, but I think we can definitely discuss the fact that G2 still managed to stay on top of the EU scene despite the tragic circumstances of David P, with his father passing away mid-tournament. I think that showcases that G2, I mean, just head and shoulders, they seem to be in a different tier. They're not immortal by any means. They're not, unfallable, but they can definitely play still to the highest level. And the fact that David P, I mean, obviously had an incredibly rough circumstances to be playing a tournament under, still is able to perform, and the team is still be able to, just win. What a showcase from G2 overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I was ready to, I mean, no matter what happened in that tournament for me, if they lost, it wouldn't have even counted in my mind.
Yeah.
But the fact that they were able to win is pretty remarkable. And also in a format that will obviously see a lot of upsets, since it was just BO1s, but regardless, they powered through and just won every single map. They just won all the maps in the playoffs, and that was that.
They lost 2 maps, and they actually lost 4 maps, during the group stage, and they lost a BO2. This team and artists have still never lost a BO3, even though they lost a match 0-2, which was, of course, the one where David P found out that his father had passed away halfway through the game as well. So obviously would have a huge asterisk next to it anyway. And it's frankly amazing that the guy was even able to carry on with the tournament. But for me, what was more interesting really than G2's dominance is the new style that Team Liquid have settled on, which looked incredibly promising. They looked arguably with the up and down of G2 during the group stages, as they, figured stuff out and dealt with their internal issues that were happening. Liquid looked probably like the best team during the group stages. You always knew that G2 were going to be able to bounce back, but Liquid looked really strong running this Raze and Reyna across most of their maps, with no Sova on Haven as well. It's such an interesting style. I've got a video planned about it as well, but they're so methodical as they take the map. I don't think there's another team in the game that plays like them. But you watch from Scream's point of view, and you hear the comms of all of the teams and how they like set up on an angle for another person, and then the next person comes in for another angle, and they set up and they take the map like that. It's so structured. It's so cool to watch.
I'll tell you what's phenomenal as well from this team. The one aspect that I really like is that I think most teams in the circumstances losing Ardis, one of the best oppers and riflers in EU, that would cripple any team, honestly. I think most teams would crumble into that sort of scenario, but Sliggy did a really nice, pretty succinct interview with Immortal Minds as well, the show that DDK and Shungaris do, and basically explained that, you know, Sliggy thinks that Scream is the best player in the world, or one of the best players in the world, if not the best player in the world, and also the kind of adjustments that they made. You can tell that there was this kind of growing pain period of time where they introduced Scream and they were trying to find their footing in this style. But now that they're locked in, I mean, what a performance, I think, not just from the players themselves to be able to find this new system to work in, but I mean, shout out to Sliggy as well, to be able to find a system that works with this team and still be dominant in EU. It is astounding that they managed to do this.
On an individual level, they're stepping up so much as well. Like the level of play that Link was bringing to this tournament was
is absurd.
Now. Yeah,
he was having some insane moments.
Out of control. Soulcast as well. He had some really, really good maps on Raze. Like oftentimes, if it wasn't the Scream show, Soulcast was just dropping 26 kills, just cleaning up on Haven. But yeah, they were really stepping up across the board. It was very impressive. They had so many amazing, just beautiful retakes.
Yeah.
They're just an incredible team to watch right now, and it was actually a travesty that they had to go out in the loser bracket BO1 to Fun plus Phoenix, because I would have loved to see them play G2. However, Fun plus Phoenix did look really good in terms of the pieces they have on the team, and obviously it's a new squad, so they're going to need a bit of time to mold together. And
Scream did look good though.
Yeah,
didn't they?
Scream had that one map where they played against G2 in the group stage, the BO2. The first one they played was Ascent. It's G2's best map. They're probably the best team in the world at Ascent. Like, actually, it's not even probable. They're the best team in the world at Ascent, hands down. Yep. And Scream, how many kills did he get? He pretty much they made a meme about him being invisible. On Ascent, he went 9 and 14 on Ascent, and they lost 13-4. They got hard red on Ascent, and then the G2 posted a tweet about it. Scream watched it, and then he dropped 31 kills on the next map. He went 31 and 11.
This was insane.
He dropped 40% of his team's kills with an ADR of 220. He was slanging. It was unbelievable. It was like a 10s level carry, but on a good team, you know?
Yeah. He was one of those rare players, and that's what makes it even more impressive as well, is that his teammates are not just all, bottom fragging, allowing 10s to get these high impact plays, but Scream is playing on a well coordinated team, that are going to be putting up very reasonable numbers inherently. But Scream is one of these magical types of players who they are so rare in esports, but the man is streaming his matches live and he's reading the chat and still playing.
Oh, you see him whenever he pops off, you can just see him check chat after the round and just gas himself up, just looking at all the pog jams.
But
his hyped.
The ability for him to have a terrible game, like, let's face it, the terrible game on Ascent, and read that tweet from an org and just turn around and say, nah, you know what, fuck you, I'm just gonna actually just slang my dick on the table and see you later. Just drop a 35 bomb. I mean, that is a rare type of player in esports. Like, those kind of people with that kind of mental resilience, they just don't exist, really. They just don't.
So the way you guys are creaming your pants about Liquid at this point, I mean, I just want to know what you have to say about Fun plus Phoenix and G2, because I mean,
very good teams.
Do you think that Liquid could be like the best team in Europe, or
could be. No. They have a very.
I don't think they could. I don't think they really can be, though, because as good as. So there's a good point, though, Johnny, because we have only talked about the positives. But for me, Liquid do have a bunch of negatives with the way that they play as well, because they're so slow-paced and methodical. They never really push for intel in the mid round. They just try and make reads on their opponents based on utility. And then when they move around the map, they always move as like 5. So they're pretty readable. And against teams like G2 that push across all different areas of the map and like pressure them for weaknesses, they kind of fall to pieces. And when the tempo is increased, they fall to pieces as well. So I think they are a really cool team to watch, and they play different to basically everybody else. I don't know another team that plays like Liquid, but I don't think they are going to be able to beat G2 unless Scream can put up bonkers stats across an entire BO3 or BO5 series.
I would disagree, funnily enough. And the reason being, I think that the arguments you make about them being pretty easily readable by sticking as 5 when they jump around maps and whatnot, and trying to make plays based off of reading the utility usage around the map are all pretty fair and applicable. But G2 also do some stuff that you could read pretty easily. Like, you have an inherent understanding of how they are going to be playing some maps, like with David P. If you have enough information, David P nowadays, you remember he used to play like up mid and Haven, trying to gain as much info as possible. They swapped that around. He plays on long A a lot of the time, and they make these adjustments. But with enough of a read on an opponent before you go into a game, which I don't know how often these teams are going to be swimming against each other. The fact that there are not regular tournaments also probably hurts this idea. But I definitely think that Liquid's playstyle isn't inherently worse. They just need to clean up some of the minor weaknesses.
Here's the thing, though. If you try and read G2 and you know that they're pushing you, so if you have a read on G2 and you're like, okay, we know that they like to push on the defensive side for information. You can't predict where they're going to push because they change it every round. So you play a nice split default kind of thing, right? You try and take map control really early on. You play wide. But if you lose your duels, G2 still win. And I don't think Liquid's fraggers are good enough to be able to go toe-to-toe with G2s if they play like wide. That's why they stick together, is because they love trading people out. But if you just try and play... If you try and just leave like one person holding a push...
Okay.
G2, they just win those aim duels.
I don't think Liquid are doing that because they feel like they're gonna lose the aim duels. Because you remember Liquid when they were Fish 1, 2, 3 and they played with Ardis. That was a team that was so confident to take ego duels across the map, either Soulcast or Ardis or whatnot. I definitely think that Liquid have the talent to be able to take individual gun duels. I just think that whether they've been coached it or whether they think it's the most appropriate way to play the game is that they play a very, very reserved style of gameplay where they want to give away as little information as possible to try and take opponents by surprise a lot of the time. I don't think it's a worse way of playing. I just think they haven't really reached the peaks of what they can do playing that way.
I agree with that.
Also, sorry, go on, Wyatt.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I agree with that, especially the last point. I think we forget how early into their lifespan that team is as well. They really haven't been together with that 5 for very long. So I would like to give them... I'll add on
as well a little bit. As much as we have been singing the praises of Scream, that is a guy as well who can make some improvements with his agent play. He plays a variety of roles, and because he's spreading himself pretty thin comparatively to other players in the scene, you often see that his ability usage isn't quite as clean as other players. There's a lot of little things that could be cleaned up with Liquid that would just turn them, in my opinion, into a monstrous team because of how disciplined they already are.
And also what I was going to say was, with Valorant as well, you have shifting meta. So if we get into a new patch where they perhaps nerf Jett, they might even nerf the op, then Liquid find themselves in a position where they actually play a different style that might become the next big thing. So all of these teams have different play styles, but they also have the different problems and their different issues, right? So just because Liquid might look bad in one department, obviously I haven't watched as much Liquid as you have, Sideshow, so I can't comment on those issues as much. But a team like Liquid, because they have a player like Scream, they will have different issues compared to a team like TSM, who relies so much on Wardell's opping, right? So that's the beauty of Valorant as well, that I think we'll have shifting metas and you see different playstyles really flourish, which means a dynamic power ranking in teams depending on the current agent meta.
Yeah, I think that's a super good point, one that I haven't really thought about too much. But if there is a Jett or an AWP nerf in the future, which it might happen because a lot of the pro players believe that combination of Jett plus AWP is a little too powerful at the moment. If that happens, fucking Liquid are the only team in the world I think that are immune to that change, because they don't ever run a Jett, and they
Sentinels.
don't really AWP that much either.
Oh yeah, Sentinels
as well.
Oh yeah, Sentinels are really good at that kind of stuff too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will say
Scream taking over.
Another little bit of information as well from the Immortal Minds interview with Sliggy is that Sliggy says he forces his players to play a variety of agents, which they don't like doing, but he firmly believes there will be some sort of draft system in the future, or at least some sort of change that will shake up the meta. And he wants to create a team that are meta-proof, where they can play a variety of roles and they're not going to be hurt by Jett getting nerfed. Like, can you imagine if Jett was nerfed coming into this tournament, the Pop Flash? Like, half the teams in NA would just be dog shit.
Yeah,
I would really appreciate a draft system like that. I think that would make for an incredible viewing experience.
I think
and yes, it probably decrease the quality of play a little bit, because you wouldn't have the peak levels of playing the same composition for like 2 months straight or whatever. But I think it'd be super interesting to watch those draft and like then consider like, oh, how does this composition play out in mid on split compared to this one, and like how they're playing through strengths. Like I think that'd be super sick.
I think it's actually inevitable. Like the rate that they're adding agents into the game, you are going to be able to construct comps that accidentally hard counter other comps. So, and that is a horrible position to be in if we get like 2 years down the line and you can accidentally be checkmated just based on agent selection. So you're forced to like not pick certain heroes because they can be accidentally hard countered. I think a draft system is the only way to add that kind of strategy.
Wyatt is concerned.
I don't know. Well, how many agents do you think would need to be added for that to be necessary?
A lot. Like you would need maybe. How many are we at the moment? Like 12? I think you'd need probably like 30 agents to get to that point. But isn't that only like 2 years away or something? What's the rate that they're adding agents at?
3 years away, right? It's like one every 2 months, I think.
Like fucking hell, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot.
I can even see like 20 agents they do it.
Yeah, maybe 20 agents you would need to do something like that.
It is a lot. Let's look forward then towards the next tournament that's coming up, the LVL Clash 2. This is an EU tournament? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So do we know the format yet for this tournament? That's coming up?
I can tell you what I hope the format is, which is just BO3s, at least in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Playoffs, 8-team single elimination bracket. All matches are best of 3. Group stage, 4 groups of 4 teams in a GSL format. Top 2 teams advance to playoffs. All matches are BO1 in the GSL format group.
Yeah.
In the groups, they're best of ones. Though. Yeah, if it's groups,
16 team. I mean, we should still get.
You lose 2 maps, you're out.
Yeah. I'm interested to see Big for the first time. They'll be in this.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, Big. Who did they pick up? A bunch of guys from CS, right?
Yeah, a bunch of German guys.
Yeah. That's a very good point. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
They've played some lower level stuff, but nothing at this kind of spot yet.
Do we still think that EU has like the top 4 teams that are actually kind of like what we would consider to be top teams? Or
we getting into this one? We get into the old quote topic.
Well, we're gonna. That's gonna be the one coming up after. Is what fRoD thinks of EU.
Well,
but
do you mean like is there a big gap between the top 4?
Yeah.
Do
you still think that there's a gap between like the top 4 teams like G2, NiP, Liquid, and I guess full play what the fuck is their name?
Fun
Full
plus
play Phoenix. Fun plus Phoenix. That's it. God, I couldn't even think of it. But do we still think that there's this gap, or do we think that the gap is sort of just being bridged?
I think there's a gap, but I think you might not see that in a BO1 kind of group stage.
No,
I still think there's
heavy, right?
Potential for upsets for sure, but I think the 5th best team is probably Bonk, unless Fabrican or Prodigy can put something clean together. Weirdly, they're all in the fucking same group for this LVL Valorant Clash 2 with in the same group as Liquid. Liquid are there with Bonk and Prodigy and Fabrican, so that's an outrageously stacked group.
Is the Turkish squad, are they playing in this? BBL?
Yeah, they are. They're in the Group D.
Group D. BBL actually had some moments of brilliance. I don't know if it was just the hype of the Turkish fan base that I was getting behind, but they were fucking rabid for this team, and I loved it.
Yeah, their star AWPer, though, has left the team.
He was problematic.
Did he leave? I was under the impression that they actually removed him to get someone else. Yeah. That's what I had seen. I could be wrong. But
no, he said CNED stated that his departure was down to the team wanted to seek to sign long-term contracts with the org, and CNED was like, I don't want to sign a long-term contract because I think I could get offers from a better team. You know what I mean? So he didn't want to lock himself into a long contract, so the team decided to remove him. So it's like a mutual kind of thing, which makes perfect sense.
Okay. Let's. Well, this moves nicely though into this general topic that fRoD said that EU wouldn't make top 3 in NA. I think that he was smoking some form of corn syrup based substance when he made this claim, because my God, I mean, it is. I wouldn't consider myself to be a heavily analytical mind in the scene, but watching both the scenes pretty religiously, you can tell that there is a much more disciplined style of gameplay that would dominate the more puggy NA teams.
Here's the thing. He said top 3, not top 2. And I've seen people say top 2, which I disagree with, but I understand if somebody really wants to argue for TSM and Sentinels.
Sure.
Okay, I disagree. But if you want to argue with that, that's okay. That's okay. I'll respect your opinion and not agree with it. But top 3? Who are you putting it? So who are you putting at 3rd? I would put Gen G. I know some people would say Immortals.
Maybe
some people.
Yeah. Cloud9
took a hit of something, they'd say Cloud9. So you have those 3 teams. You're telling me that the top 3 in EU...
Do you think G2 wouldn't beat...
G2 couldn't beat Immortals, Cloud9, or Gen G? I mean...
Yeah, it's an absurd take. It's my opinion that... In my opinion, fRoD... It kind of makes sense from his point of view, though, in some sense. I don't want to go too deep on the psychoanalysis here. but fRoD is coaching and then also played a little bit with T1, who are a team of sick CS talent who expected to come into this game and dominate, and found the level of play to be much higher than they expected in North America. And so I think for him, he has struggled to be top 3 in NA. He views it as an impossible task because the skill level is higher than he thought it would be. And so I think because he views it as an impossible task, he views it as an impossible task for anybody else. Like he can't conceive that the EU teams would be able to catch up to that level because he thinks that they would be the same as him, as T1.
True psychoanalysis
that is a
going on.
Genius deep dive. That's fucking hilarious and makes sense. I love that deep dive.
Wow.
Oh my God.
It's the fucking classic thing. What's it called? The Dunning-Kruger effect.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah.
I think though that I've seen a lot of people in Twitch chat and forum comments and tweets and stuff like that who are just fans, but they are very serious fans and seem to have watched a lot of both Europe and North America, saying you can just tell that North America is better. Like there are some people, and it's the same for Europe as well. There's the same amount, maybe even more people saying that Europe is better. But there is definitely a base of people that really do believe that the North American scene, now whether that be because there's more depth in terms of teams that can compete at a reasonable level in North America, or whether that's because there's more organizations or more tournaments to be able to see them. I don't know, but it does seem to be a genuine, real argument within the scene and not just something that people have already decided.
It's an argument as old as time. In the Twitch chat, you always see it, the regional events that are crossing over, NA versus EU. The copy pastas, the spam. It is quite literally primitive brain pride. And I'm talking, this dates back to when we were in tribes. The tribalism aspect of like, this is my region. I watch this the most. They are the best because I like Wardell and I'm a tier 3 sub. So like, I think that is where the majority of this comes from. Maybe I'm discrediting the average person, but the average person has showcased to me so many times, Josh, that they lack any form of critical thinking. So toss it out the fucking window. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that say like, "Oh, I'm from Europe, and even I believe that North America's better," which I don't fucking know whether they're just North American.
You're just a Wardell simp. Fuck off.
But I think there is an argument that TSM and Sentinels are on the same level as the European top teams. I would stand by that. I think that the way that, in particular, the Sentinels play is at the same kind of level and has the same potential as like your Liquids and your Fun Plus Phoenixes. I think that G2, in my opinion, are the best team in the world right now. I haven't really seen anything from the teams in North America that would lead me to believe that they would be able to contest and beat G2 over the course of multiple series and get the better of them. But I definitely think the TSM and Sentinels, the rivalry has pushed them to get a lot better. TSM would have a month and a half ago, no, even a month ago, I think would have been slapped around by the European teams. But I think now that they've been pushed by Sentinels, both of those teams have got better to the point where it would be a really close thing.
Yeah, I would put Sentinels up there in like top 5 at least, or if not 4.
Top 5 at
Pretty
least?
Reasonable. Yeah.
G2. See, I think this is just an impossible task to begin with. So I don't know why we're bothering. I'm just going to go straight for the green card and say that I think NA, they're top 3 in the world. So, TSM, Wardell, obviously incredible upper. Tense, best player in the world. His mechanics are unreal. I mean, I've seen him just win pistol rounds by himself, and then Sentinel, Sinatra. He's a better version of Scream. So why bother with the conversation? Just hand me the green card already, and we're good to go, okay? I'll stand by your side, Twitch chat. If you like it, what you're hearing, follow Reinforce on Twitter. There you go.
What I would also really like to see is not just Jonathan getting a green card, of course, so that he can stop making horrible takes about.
Look, man, I'll get the green card and then marry you, and we both have one. So
and then you can both freely criticize the North American region.
Yes.
Yeah. What I would really like to see is, so normally when you get these first international lands, normally one region is kind of dominant. I know that that's not the way that it went right at the beginning with Overwatch. Like Envious was still competitive. They got to like semifinals or finals against the European teams at the beginning of Overwatch. But it seems to me like usually one region is just better than the other. And the top 3-4 teams are actually significantly better than even the top team in another region. It would be almost too scripted if the best team in Europe and the best team in North America and the best team in Korea and the best team in Japan and the best team in Brazil were all exactly on the same level. There's going to be some regions that are just flat out worse once we get to a LAN scenario. That's where I'm really interested to see, like, where people hedge their bets a bit and they're like, oh, some of the European teams are better, but not all of them. Whether that all ends up just being whack and one region dominates.
The thing that really, oh my god, I just lost my train of thought. The thing that really will have an impact on the Valorant competitive scene is just like the infrastructure of the EU region. And I think if you're a G2 fan or a Liquid fan right now, you have to be worried about the state of EU, because that will have, given long enough of a term, that will have an impact on the quality of play in Europe. And we've seen it, even in European Overwatch has taken a big hit because the infrastructure is not quite the same as the NA region that has academy teams and they have way more money and they build the better rosters. And like, you look now and you see the Pop Flash is, no pun intended, popping off. And it's just better, and it just increases the level of play. You mentioned the rivalry between TSM and Sentinels, and you have those rivalries in EU, but pushing that to a tournament in the Ignition series like Pop Flash is just going to impact and motivate these players even further. So Europe not really having like an equivalent is going to impact the scene given long enough of a time span. So I'm certainly looking out for EU to have better tournaments.
I think any final thoughts before we move on to the Pop Flash tournament?
At what point do we start making the insanely speculative... No, not our own tournament. The Clash on King tournament. Ignition series.
Why not? Come on.
Why not?
Yeah, give us the cash. Let's go.
The Plat Chat series of events. We'll run it in the off season. No, I mean, at what point do we start speculatively creating our own world power rankings?
Oh God.
That's...
I've already begun.
Wyatt's already doing it.
Yeah.
It's so...
I've started building my own, and I feel like people are at the stage right now where they're just primed enough to mold about them.
100%.
Like it seems like now is the time where the problem is there's no lands on the horizon, right? So you're like blue balling people for months and months and months.
But think of the playoff. Think of the payoff at the end of it. It would be insane. I think if we wanted to clickbait people, 100%, we can start doing it next week. But whether or not it's ethical, I don't know. Let's talk about this Pop Flash tournament though. But again, we're going to talk about it in pretty broad terms because there's matches currently being played as you're watching this, most likely, and also matches being played that are ongoing right now, like T1 Immortals. Currently, I'm going to give you guys a spoiler alert because I don't know if you're going to watch it, but Immortals just took map 1 against T1, 13-3.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's powerful.
That's a great opening statement to start things off. But generally,
fucking hell, that's why as well. I'm looking at the roles that they're playing. So this
is the map. This is the game. This is the live game.
Oh yeah, we were talking about EIU, however you pronounce his name, the guy that came up from the academy roster, and he was the best player on their team, I think. Just from the very small amount that I had watched of the academy team and looking at the stats as well. But he was a Brimstone player, and they're looking for a Jett AWPer. So instead, they've swapped AZK onto the Jett, and he went 7-16 over the course of Bind, which I don't know. I didn't watch the game. I don't know whether it was his fault. I'll have to go back and look over that again. But his ADR was also 77, and he's always been quite a passive player on this team before. So I don't know, man. This team has made so many role changes that this is probably going to be a horrible showing for T1.
What I wanted to do... Sorry to interrupt.
No.
I wanted to go around in a circle, basically, and talk in broad terms. Any expectation or storyline that you were looking forward to with this tournament here, whether it's, Sentinels TSM or whether you think a team's going to have a good performance outright. What is one thing you're looking forward to? Starting with you, Johnny.
I'm kind of excited for this Dignitas team. And obviously, they've already played a match, so I got a head start on that narrative overall. But I mean, they did look really good, as Sideshow said as well, against TSM. It wasn't not only TSM falling flat. So Dignitas winning that match 2-0, I mean, they could be a bit of a dark horse in this tournament. And I don't think they'll win against the likes of Sentinels, rather, if that eventually happens. But this is a storyline that is really interesting to me and one that I'll follow for sure.
Josh?
Yeah, I was hoping that we would see TSM upset by somebody. I actually thought it might be Gen G rather than Dignitas. I know that TSM normally are slow out of the gates when it comes to these kind of tournaments, and I assume that TSM is still going to be able to get it out of the groups. It's possible, though, that they could lose to Gen G or Cloud9, especially with Cloud9 looking better. If TenZ has a monster game, they could still beat TSM. We could see a crazy upset here. I mean, the people watching will already know whether or not that's happened, but I'm interested to see how that sets the overall bracket up, though, because it's likely then that we'll get some kind of TSM Sentinels clash early in the bracket, and it sets up another team on the other side of the bracket to go on a deep run, whether that be a Dignitas or a Gen G or a Cloud9 or whoever it happens to be. Or in Immortals as well. They've not won a tournament. And this would be a big grand finals appearance for a team where it has previously only been Sentinels TSM rivalry. It would be interesting to see whether we really can add another team into that bucket.
Go on, Wyatt.
Well, yeah, I was definitely excited for Dignitas as well, but more so than anything, I think just after seeing the day one games, I am interested in seeing where Cloud9 take us with this tournament, because they're running just entirely new comps. I mean, it just looks like a brand new team in terms of everything but the people they have. So I'm interested in seeing what they do throughout the tournament, and more specifically, how their comp changes work against the real top tier. I mean, Gen G is obviously top tier, but I mean against either TSM or Sentinels, ideally.
Yeah.
So,
for me personally,
once there's more tape on them.
Yeah,
Sorry, go.
The tape aspect is pretty important. For me personally, it's the same thing that I would keep saying every episode that we record of this, which is like, it's a matter of time before Immortals are going to have a tournament that's actually good for them, right? Because they constantly get stuck at this fence post, which is either TSM or Sentinels knocking them out. They struggle to beat those two teams in particular, and I do firmly believe that it's like an experience thing from watching those games, because they've showcased that they have executes, they have reasonable foundations of which they can trade each other, good defaults, positioning, all those aspects of the game seem relatively good, but they just seem to struggle when it goes late in a game and in a match, and they choke, it feels like, a little bit. I don't know if this is something you guys can agree with me on, but having watched that, they always seem to struggle against that, and I don't know if it's the mental aspect of playing against teams like TSM and Sentinels, but I'm hoping now, especially with TSM, if they have a poor performance and then they end up playing against Sentinels early, opens it up a little bit. And I mean, I got a bit of a head start because I've just read map 1 of their game against T1 and they've dominated them. But I'm hoping that this is the tournament where Mortals are finally taken a little bit more seriously by the armchair analysts. And they can finally, they can cement themselves in that top 3 position overall. Do I think it's going to happen? I actually think Sentinels are most likely going to be taking this tournament again as the favorites. Is there any disagreements with that?
Especially considering how easy their group is, they're almost guaranteed top 1 coming out of their group. Like the groups were, in my opinion, fairly unbalanced anyway. Maybe because people thought Dignitas would be the worst team, but in my opinion, clearly T1 was the worst team coming into this with the roster changes that they'd had. So I'm looking at Group A again, and I think that we could be broadcasting this with TSM being eliminated. I think there's a very good chance that
by the time you're watching this, TSM could already have been eliminated. Entirely possible.
They have to go up against Gen G and then either Dignitas again or Cloud9. And Dignitas and Cloud9 have both looked good when they played today, and Gen G are no slouches either. And with TSM starting off so slow, this is a punishing format, the GSL one. You have to start early.
Also, really bad matchup for TSM historically. When that run after T1 Nerd Street, which they won, every time they got eliminated after that, or almost every time, it was always Cloud9 who knocked them out.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
So if they run into that matchup, that could be it.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah.
Could already
this
be
should
talking
really
about
be, though. This tournament should be, and I said this before we began and before TSM lost as well, this should be Sentinels to win, even though TSM won the previous one. It should be Sentinels to win. They should be your favorites. And I think that they should now pull ahead of TSM in terms of the talk about being a number 1 team, being the best team in North America. They'll have won, I believe, the most Ignition Series tournaments if they also win this one. I think there were 5, right? And they're tied 2-2 at the moment.
I'm not sure.
That actually could be totally wrong.
They would be tied 2-2 with TSM,
really?
But they would have more tournament wins overall. They won
because they won like the
ones.
Sun Cup or whatever it was called. Yeah. So I think that Sentinels look like they have what it takes to be able to just power forwards.
Roll forwards, yeah. Roll deep with the mandem, as we all do.
Yep.
Let's also, one thing that's come out of this is finally we're starting to see Killjoy being played a little bit in the professional play. And teams have been running, I hate this comp so much. I hate this Killjoy Cypher composition because not only because people play it in ranked and it's just dog shit, but when you're playing this kind of composition, Josh, I know you've been watching the games pretty closely, and I think you've got a different opinion on this. I don't know if you.
I have started coming around to it, but
I'll speak my
I
piece.
think you need to set the groundwork because I
think
agreed with you originally.
When you run this composition, you're essentially putting all your eggs in a defense basket, but it also gives you way less options in terms of the way you can execute things. Because Killjoy's entire kit, you cannot really utilize any of it. Even the Molotovs, it's very orchestrated when you're tossing them, where they're going to land, and somebody can just destroy it just as easily. It's not a piece of utility you can clear corners with very easily. It's not a piece of utility you can clear things easily with. And when you run the Killjoy, and you're more often than not sacrificing a Sova or something else, like maybe even a Raze in some circumstances, both of those characters, both of those agents are so important for executes onto sites. Like you're saying here, the Owl Drone, so important for clearing stuff. Maybe it's the grenade, maybe it's the boombot. I don't know what it is. But when you run the Killjoy in replacement of that, you are severely limiting your options on attack side when it comes to those rounds. And you have to be picture perfect if you're running that composition to even realistically get value out of it. Now, the agent is new, so maybe teams aren't used to actually playing against it to a degree, which is an argument to be made. And maybe that's why teams are forcing it, because they have been having success of it in scrims. But inherently, I fucking hate it.
Okay.
I agree with you originally. I mean, I heard people in my ranked games saying stuff like, Triple Sentinel is a great comp, dude. We could definitely run that. And I'm molding because Killjoy main's so boosted in ranked just because of the additional damage that they do. I truly believe that. I've had some terrible Killjoys on my team. But I am starting to come around to this version of the composition that doesn't have a Sage in it. And it's the one that T1 are running currently that you see at the top of your screen. The reason being is that I think you model it, instead of thinking about it in terms of having 2 ciphers on the team, you think about it in terms of having a comp where you don't have the Sova, but you have the... So it's like running the the Sage version of the comp,
sure,
but with a Killjoy instead.
Yes. Yeah,
and what that does for you on offense is that, well, first of all, I think it's necessary for me to come out with the hot take that I think people had a bad understanding of what made Sage good to begin with. I think that her heal and her res were massively overstated in terms of being the core parts of her kit. And I think really what she accomplished in a lot of the comp in terms of the just neutral game was her ability to just choke off one of the sites, one of the areas of the map with her slows, with her wall. Very difficult to be able to execute into her. You have to force out that utility. You need to be able to expend it. And so replacing her with another character that offers defensive ability means that your defense isn't really affected too much. But it doesn't mean that your defense is better. This Cypher Killjoy composition, I don't think, is better than running Cypher Sage on defense. I think the Sage is also really good at being able to defend with. But what it does let you do is you can control the map absolutely on attack. You see the Killjoy turret that's at the top left at the moment?
Yeah, they just place it on the one side of the map.
No one can push out B main, and it's fire and forget. You leave the turret over there, and now your Killjoy doesn't have to play scared like a Sage would, because you don't have to stay alive in order to get value out of the heal or the res or the slow orb or whatever that you would be using situationally. You just dump that turret down, and at that point, you just become a fragging bot that is running around using mollies to clear areas. And it provides you actually with utility on attack, because you already have an area that's being covered, almost like if you had a cam sat over there, and you still have another person that you can even entry with if you wanted to with the Killjoy, because you have nothing you need to stay alive for on offense. So I'm coming around to it. I feel like there is a way of playing this composition properly.
There probably is a way, but I echo Bren's sentiment in that it's harder to execute on site. So like, yes, you can guarantee a lot of map control because of the turret, but it's way harder to execute based on that map knowledge and, you know, the positioning you have to begin with. Because if you only have like one duelist and one smoker to aid both of those sentinels, it gets way harder to really execute on that. I also think that, yes, the turret is really good at, you know, gathering info that way you described, but Sage's abilities, you can't counter them like the same way you can counter like traps or something with a shock dart or the mollies or whatever. Like, I think that because you can kill the molly, right?
Yeah,
you can kill the molly. So in that way, I think that you can play around Killjoy's abilities a lot more than you can play around Sage's abilities, because when she decides to slow, she will slow, and you can't do anything about it rather than just wait out. So I think that Sage's wall, etc., I think it's just too strong, and I think that obviously you can make it work because people don't know how to play around it, but I think there will be a point where like double sentinel, it will give you too much of one thing, and you need a well-balanced comp to be able to play the game optimally in the end anyway.
Yeah. This kind of style that's being played currently, the more I think about it, I mean, the points you're making are so valid as well, Josh, because they still can get a reasonable amount of information with running the Cypher on attack, so they're not hurting too much from the lack of Sova, but even still, it's one of those things where if you had a Sage instead of the Killjoy, yes, you're giving up that inherent pressure that you're always going to have on the map with your turret, but in most situations, I'd rather have a slow to try and execute. It's so much easier to get value out of a slow compared to the molly.
I don't know if...
Or the wall.
I think you guys are understating the value that the molly can have on attack.
Yeah, the molly on attack is powerful.
Yeah, we even referring back to the day one Cloud9 Ascent game, there were a lot of moments where Mitch was just... I had even mentioned to you, I'm like, oh, I hope he throws this cross-map molly that just lands on catwalk so you can't get peeked when you're pushing into mid initially.
Yeah.
And he was doing that. There are already effective lineups where you can just land the molly down and nobody's going to be peeking from that angle. And
you can't kill it before he pops it, right? So it is just a molly at that
lands,
point on
pops,
offense.
and it's, you have a molly. So you can still deny a lot of area with it.
I would say this comp is arguably worse on defense. And Bren, it was you that put me onto this line of thinking.
Oh, right.
Because you said in all of your ranked games that when you play Cypher Killjoy, they always roll you on attack, but they lose on defense. And I thought to myself, yeah, that has happened to me as well. But why? There must be some reason. Maybe it's a coincidence, but I like to think things through in case they aren't. And I think that this comp is arguably worse on defense than it is on offense on a map like Ascent, specifically on a map like Ascent, because the map is like two big extremities and on attack, And you can just control them with a Cypher and a Killjoy immediately. Beginning of the round, immediately controlled. And the rest of you don't even have to be next to that utility. You just plonk down a turret, plonk down a tripwire and a cam. Those are the extremities controlled, and then you put your bodies in mid. And the map control it affords you is outrageous. But then on defense, you see the mollies get killed and the alarm bot gets killed. And Killjoy isn't actually as good as Cypher or Sage when it comes to locking down a site.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just going to add one tiny thing. Is like, her utility is very susceptible with preset positions, the shock arrows or satchels or anything. And it's the radius of that. You just need one instance of damage, and that is it. And there's a pretty big radius of a lot of these abilities that can damage that. So, yeah, it's not as good on the defense. I agree with you. I didn't really think about it that heavily, but go ahead, Johnny.
My main concern is just like, Sideshow is going to force us to play this comp in ranked, and I really don't want us to.
I'm definitely not.
I really don't want us to play this comp Sideshow. So please stop.
I'm not down to play this comp in ranked.
I would only play this on Ascent. Strictly only play this on Ascent to try it out once.
That's a really good point, though, actually, Johnny, because Cloud9 tried to play it on Haven as well. Am I getting that right? Did they play it on Haven? No.
Wait, no, you're
someone played it on Haven.
Envy played Killjoy against Sentinels, and obviously there's a bigger skill disparity between those two teams than in the Cloud9 Gen G match, I think.
Yeah.
However, Envy was struggling to get any real value out of the Killjoy throughout that game.
They also played on Haven.
I don't think it was on Haven. I don't think the Killjoy is that good on Haven. I don't think it affords you the same advantages on attack that it does on Ascent. On Ascent, you control B main, you control A main, and you push down mid. Or at least you have the information that nobody is pushing into you. But on Haven, there's so many avenues to take care of that one turret doesn't really do anything for you. There isn't a great place to put that turret where it helps that much. Like, you can put it in Garden to cover a short push, but they'll just kill it from the bottom of short. They don't have to commit in order to kill your turret, whereas they do if they're pushing out on B on Ascent. So I don't think there's a good default setup where you can run the Killjoy and take the same level of map control on Haven. And so I don't think that it affords you the same value whatsoever when it comes to offense. I think only on Ascent do I like this comp.
I want to kind of finish this topic off as well, just by saying one of the things that I didn't really consider with running a Killjoy that you get is that one of this style of play that's been increasingly popular in EU is running down the clock, like how Na'Vi used to play, or a lot of these CIS teams where they'd run it down to the final few seconds and execute last minute, because the entire idea behind that is that you're forcing mistakes out of the enemy. But one of the biggest deterrents to that is actually the Killjoy ult in a lot of senses. Like, if you try and play down a time when they have a Killjoy ult up, you are probably just walking into defeat, just straight off of the back of a round. Like, it actually puts some...
Oh, well, we saw that at the end of the... Who was it? That was the end of the Cloud9
it was the very last round.
Someone got the very last round. He got detained for the loss.
If you have to think about it, when that ult is up, even just the sheer threat of it is going to be deducting the amount of time you can work with in a round. Just the threat of having it up, which is a huge deterrent compared to one thing that you would be replacing it with, which is the Sage, who in turn having a Resurrect, very situational. Sometimes you're not going to be able to get value out of it, but a Killjoy ult, you're going to find it hard to not get value out of that ultimate because you're forcing the enemy's positioning no matter what, whether they're pushing into you or away.
How many ult points is it? Is it 7?
I think it's 7, I think it's the same as Res.
So you get like 2 per half?
If you're playing well, you'll get 2 per half. And those really... I mean, in ranked, they're guaranteed 2 round wins, basically, because the ult is so powerful. At the pro level, I don't think you're really going to be able to guarantee it. Like, I didn't see any teams so far using it on offense to just, like, take a site. I assume that is super obvious and just gets countered very effectively by standing at the outside or flanking around them, or you just know where everyone's going to be positioned at that point. But it can be a highly effective ultimate.
Yeah. Cool. Any final thoughts on Killjoy? Is it becoming your main, Wyatt?
No, definitely.
If you're going to play Killjoy, please, for the love of God, play some deathmatch and win your neutral matchups. Because if you rely on utility to get kills, I mean, you're not going to make it past Plat 3, please.
You just kind of triggered me actually a little bit because the amount of killjoys. I want to go on a little bit of a tirade here to end things off, a little bit of a rant, because the amount of times we're playing ranked recently, and we've been 4-stacking a little bit. Yes, we're the scum of humanity, but at least we talk to our teammate and we actually say, hey, what do you like to play? We'll work around you, like every single time we get into a game.
We're a boosting group for solo queue.
Yeah, pretty much. And we had 3 games, 3 games in a row where they said, oh, I'm a Killjoy main, and I'm just thinking, oh my fucking God, save me, save me. Because inherently, this character, there's a range of players that play from Plat to Diamond, and they will never get higher than that, but they have got there by playing this flowchart style of Valorant, where they are like, I am in a post-plant scenario, I will throw my grenade and hide. And they do this on most rounds, and they just don't have like the idea about trading or maybe trading their own life for a bit of map control or a kill. They inherently want to fall into this trap of playing in a very, very, very orchestrated way, and it fucking pisses me off.
Teammates as well.
My main strategy the past couple of weeks has actually been to pay so much attention to my own team to know when they are inting and me trading off them. So I just rack up kills because I know when my teammate is about to int, I'm like, yes, time for me to trade, and I just rack up the scoreboard and just climb. It's great. So just learn to acknowledge when your teammates are feeding, and you'll climb and trade off them. It's great.
I hate how one-dimensional Killjoy mains are. So this is my plea to you if you're a Killjoy main. There's nothing wrong with it. Keep playing it. But please, just don't get stuck in your ways of thinking, oh, in a post-plant scenario, I'm going to chuck my molly. Okay.
Also, don't use your ult before they plant. If they're engaging on the site, don't use your ult. Use it after the plant. Yeah. Because I've been in games where the Killjoy just like, oh, they're pushing me. I'm putting my ult down. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, I mean, it's just inherently we play at such a low rank in terms of like Plat Diamond that people are just going to make mistakes like that anyway. But yeah, I think this is going to top it off. I wanted to put an end to this podcast because I want to catch the end of the Immortals T1 game, which is currently live. So which is the final match of the day, and it's looking like it's shaping up to be an interesting one. So yeah. By the time you guys are watching this...
like rolls.
Huh?
Interesting if you like rolls. Wasn't the first map?
Well, it's currently 9-6 on Ascent for Immortals. So Immortals are kind of bringing it back a little bit. Oh, sorry. T1 are almost bringing it back. And if it goes to a best of 3, then if it goes to that third map, that could be pretty spicy. So yeah. But by the time you guys are watching this live, there will be matches currently being played, I think, at 9 a.m. So by the time this is up, there will be matches being played. Anyway, whatever. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. We hope you had a good time. Make sure you like and subscribe for all the content. We may start to make this a more weekly thing depending on the frequency of tournaments as well, because right now we're bi-weekly, and also it depends, on a bunch of other factors. But yes, hopefully you enjoyed, and we will see you next time.